Hi there, do you recognize scenes like this? Or like this? Then you or someone you love may be suffering from benchlessness. Benchlessness affects 1 in 4 Australians between the ages of 22 and 45 and is a crisis I believe we can do something about. In fact, I'm suffering from benchlessness right now. But I'm going to build a small portable workbench, something I can fit in the car, take out to the field, the bush, set up in the workshop, wherever I need it. I'll be building it out of a tubular steel frame welded together with a sturdy plywood bench top and a multifunction vise in the corner for all of my fixturing requirements. So it's time for me to go shopping, and it's time for you to enjoy this calming cinematic masterpiece of my trip to Bunnings warehouse.
So for this project, I bought square steel tube in 3 different profiles. The smallest we've got is 35 by 35mm by 3mm wall thickness. Next, we have 50 by 50mm by 4mm wall thickness. And lastly, we have 65 by 65mm by 6mm wall thickness, which will be used to make receptacles that the vertical posts will bolt into so that the benchtop can be removed easily.
Loosen that tensioner there, and we'll spin this guy around to 45-ish degrees. It doesn't need to be perfect because when we weld it, I'll actually have a little gap in the joint that I can fill as I weld, and that also leaves you some flexibility to adjust and correct the angle. There we go. That bit's probably going to be toasty. First cut is done.
Alright, that's our 4 main pieces done to form the frame for the benchtop. As you can see, the corners are a little bit rough here off the bandsaw and they'll need to clean up. And voila! So I've just hit these on the belt sander, put a bevel on the outer edges, which will give me a space to fill in with the TIG welder as I weld them up. I've also gone over them with a file and then a degreasing agent to make sure that they are perfectly clean before we begin the welding process.
Okay, I've got one corner clamped up here, and as tempting as it is to just weld all the way along it, we're just going to have to start with a little spot right in the center there, and that way I can still manipulate the pieces later.
And I ran out of gas, and had a problem with the camera that needed to be repaired. So I took a few weeks off this project, and came back to this. Yeah, that's what happens when the sea breeze is blowing on your half-finished steel project. But we'll jump back on the belt sander, we'll clean them up, and we'll go again. Much better. Okay, I have partially welded each of the corners now, but before I fully weld them, I want to make sure I have a perfect rectangle here. So I know that the lengths are equal on the long and the short side, but I need to measure it diagonally before I'll know if it is perfectly square. So I do this by measuring the two diagonals, and if one is longer than the other, I'll know we are out of square and it's not going to line up with the bench top properly. Now I can see here that this diagonal is actually 6mm longer than the other, which is not enough to cause us any problems for this build, but I will be able to fix that in the next step as I weld the inside corners of the frame. Now to do that, I take the two corners that form the shortest diagonal, and I'm going to heavily weld those inside corners first, which should actually pull the frame back into square. Now, some of these inside corner welds went terribly between having the camera shoved in there, not getting my head in the way. I couldn't really see what I was doing. But you can see here how the welding process works, how the arc is struck, how the fill material is put in, but I essentially had to redo these later off camera where I could see what I was doing. Okay, now that I've welded those inside corners, we'll check again. Got 1461. Perfect rectangle. Now I'm going to start welding up and completing these side welds on both sides, and then I'll go around and finish the inside and outside corners. We'll go from there. Now I've finished welding the inside corners and the edges, so now welding the outside corners together, and I don't need any fill material for this because I just melt the two sides together and it forms a nice rounded edge. I don't have the steadiest hands in the world, but I think it'll hold together. The type of welding that I'm doing here is called TIG welding, which stands for tungsten inert gas. The pointy bit you can see on the end of my torch is the tungsten, and it's surrounded by an inert gas shield that flows over the weld to keep the oxygen away while the metal is hot. To begin the weld, you strike an electrical arc from your tungsten tip to the job. You keep that arc in one place until you've got a pool of molten metal, which you then pull slowly along the length of the weld. You might also notice me doing little circles here, which helps to pull in more material from each side. These are definitely hobby quality welds though, so I wouldn't go showing them to a professional. Okay, I've just cut a piece of steel which I'm going to throw in the middle here to give us a little bit more support for our bench top. I start all of my welds by tack welding first, which is when you weld a small single point to hold the material in place. This is important because it allows you to make small adjustments before you do the full welds. It also prevents heat distortion from bending your material out of place. I won't be winning any awards for my welding, but as long as my bench doesn't fall over on me, I'll be happy. The next feature I need to add is something to bolt the vise to. While I've been working in the shed today, the rain has been pouring down outside and I'm dealing with some unwanted visitors. I've created a salt perimeter. Hopefully this will do the trick. Yeah, how does that taste, buddy?
Crushing defeat.
And that's the welding done for this project. Time for the bench top, which is made of 2 sheets of 1/2-inch plywood glued together and bolted to the steel frame.
Small portable workbench. Something I can fit in the car. Now there are 2 things I need a workbench to do. This and this. I think it's perfect. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.